Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and people of all ages. It's the After Service Podcast, production of Open Door Community Church, where we talk about current events. We talk about the recent teachings on Sundays, and sometimes as we have been doing lately, we're working through a book. However, today is a current event. But okay, hi Brian.
Hi, good to see you, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, today what we're going to do is, because I mean the topics, the political issues going on right now are quite historic.
And we're jumping right in for people who are used to our original banter at the beginning. So we're
right. Other than that, hey, what have you been doing this week? I've been laying pavers for a shed this week, and I'm physically pretty tired. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. Just working, nothing particularly exciting. First week I haven't traveled in a little bit.
Because 2 weeks ago you were in another state, and then last week you were traveling for business. So
yeah, I was in another country last week.
Oh yeah, you went to another country.
Wow, how exotic.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, it was actually lovely. Vancouver.
Food and sights, and it was amazing, and it's
lovely. Vancouver is lovely.
Where it was, because it was amazing. Did you say
Vancouver, British Columbia?
Oh, you gave it away.
Well, that's the third time I've said it, but we were talking over each other.
Okay. All right. Hey, now topic. So yeah, we are dealing with a lot of, frankly, quite historical things. I remember. And obviously, one of the big ones is the attempted assassination of Trump. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is one of those things that you'll remember all your life. I remember where I was when the Challenger thing happened. I remember the attempt on Reagan. Mm-hmm. People who were alive at the time can remember when JFK was shot. Where were you, Joe, when you heard the news?
The Challenger?
No.
Okay. Quick, we'll come back real quick. Where were you for the Challenger, though? You were in school, right?
School. I was in school, and I remember I actually heard it from the drama teacher, right? And all the kids and everybody were like, "Wow, what? This is crazy." So yeah.
Yeah, I was in sophomore English class, and I can see the teacher's face. I can't remember her name, which is kind of a bummer because she was pretty cool. But I remember she lost it.
Did she?
Yeah. She was, yeah. That was kind of the end of school in many respects that day. I think it was only like my second or third period of the day. It was right after, geometry, English. Yeah. And
you remember? Yeah. But it's interesting, that was just such a moment in our lives, and it was bigger for that teacher because there was a teacher on.
Right. Yeah. And a woman, and because my teacher was a woman, and to have,
personal.
Yeah, it was so anyway, you were asking me about the circumstances where I heard about the Trump thing, and to be honest with you, I don't remember, because and this maybe goes to speak to a little bit of what we're talking about today, is I tend to be distrustful of different sources. I think I saw it in a Facebook feed, like mention of it, and I'm like, well, I don't really what does that even mean? And then I had to go, I think I was busy, and so I didn't get a chance to look at it till later. And then it was like, oh, that's a thing. Oh, that is, okay. I'm so distrustful that it was like, well,
America.
Yeah. I'm like, it probably took me a couple of hours before I'm like, oh, this wasn't some weird anomaly. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some hyperbole created by various people, in my social media connections, this was a thing. So it took me a while, and that's kind of how I process news in general. It's like, oh, well, I don't know how I feel about that. I think I need more information. That's how I address those things. Say again?
Because you didn't know if it was real.
Right. I didn't. Yeah, and I hadn't had a chance to verify it. Versus the Challenger, where it was like the whole school was like, everybody erupted. Right. I don't know.
And it was, you more or less could trust what you heard on the news.
Right. And in social media, I'm always like, it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum people are on. I'm like, if they come out and say something, I'm like, better. I'm going to have to look that up.
Oh.
So what about you? What was your response?
I was at a baseball game, and I hadn't looked at my phone for literally probably 2 hours, and then I was like, it's in between inning. Let me pull it out and just, as people do, like, I got a few minutes. I'm gonna kill it by just looking stuff, and I opened it up. I don't know if it was the YouTube or Facebook, one of the two, and I saw it, and I went, and instantly, without even, there wasn't even a thought, I said, someone just tried to shoot Trump out loud.
Mm-hmm.
People around me kind of stopped, and they looked at me like, are you serious? And I go, I think so. And I looked a little bit more like, yeah. And then for the next 10 minutes, I was just like, wow. Crazy. So that's kind of was my response. It's just like, but honestly, I wasn't, I was both shocked and not surprised.
And that was actually kind of my response when I saw it. It was on Saturday, right?
It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
It was Saturday afternoon because it was like 6 o'clock in Pennsylvania time.
Okay, so I know what I was doing now. We were cleaning the house because we're hosting a picnic for the clinic, and so we wanted it. And so I would have just been picking up my phone every once in a while, going. But my response, kind of once I recognized that it was a thing, was like, I mean, I'm not a fan of the guy, and I don't like the idea of that being part of our political climate. I think it's the idea that somebody would take it upon themselves to take the life of somebody in that way. And then, of course, in my mind, I'm like, who did it? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist,
Right.
It's not like which, who, not who was the person and what were their circumstances that they felt that was appropriate,
We're not, the point of our conversation is not really the conspiracy parts of it, although that's rampant right now.
Yeah.
What I'm more interested in, and this is to use this today as a little bit of so how do we think through this stuff as a Christian and applying some things that we've talked about today? I mean, in these books, and one of them I think is what you just said, is the reaction of, this is not appropriate. I think that obviously that's a response, and we talked about, and we brought this up briefly on the next day on Sunday, is you said there's no one in your life that you know of that are happy about the fact that he was almost killed, and I haven't talked to all of the people in my life, but I do know that there are a decent number, and I don't know what percentage, but it's not an anomaly, of people on the left who wish he had not missed. Mm-hmm. And that's very disturbing. It's not politicians, we'll be honest, but there are known people that did, and that's how have we gotten to this point of as a country? And it's like, ooh, and so I'm going to leave and let you respond to that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, because I I had a conversation with somebody who is a kind person, like, I preface it with they're a kind person because we talked about this, and they were wrestling with the idea that part of them wished that the shooter didn't miss, and the other part of them is like, it's not appropriate for this to happen, so when we think about that, that's where I go, okay, I know the heart of this person, so under what circumstances do they wrestle with that? And knowing them as I do, I know that it comes out of hurt, in the same way that people kind of generalize. They've been hurt by the church, and so every church, is causing people pain. In the same way, I think this person associates Trump with some hurt or some wrongdoing or whatever, and so he becomes this kind of figurehead, taking on maybe inappropriately some of those things. So it's helpful to me to understand how a person gets there without condoning the thought.
Yeah. And some of that's just the rhetoric of the day.
Yeah.
When you spend 9 years calling him things like Hitler, that kind of over the top rhetoric dehumanizes a person to where that's a reasonable response. I mean, yeah, as I've seen people say, if this is, if he's Hitler and this is 1939, wouldn't you take the shot? Well, yeah. Would you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's a big philosophical question, right? So from a biblical standpoint, can we say that killing Hitler would have been appropriate?
Can you?
Yeah, and I don't think you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can. So I think some of that is just wait a minute here. And I loved your prayer on that Sunday afterwards, is that may this be a unifying moment.
Yeah.
Where we go today, where we say, hey, wait a minute here. Things have gotten a little hyperbolic here, this is not all right. I mean, and on the same time, my prayer request was, may there not be any retaliation, because although it's, and maybe there'll be, you and others will disagree, I don't think it's very common from the right to use violence in this way, but could it happen? Oh, absolutely. So I'm grateful that nothing has happened to Biden. Now he stepped down, so it's not really even a thing. But we can't have that stuff.
Yeah, I would have, and I don't know anything about the shooter, but one of the things that came out and the discussion points were, and we should probably get more into the meat of what we were going to talk about, but were who's behind it. And so there was some of it of, oh, this was staged, and it was right. And then, but then also the same people are saying, or other people are saying, well, Biden's clearly behind it. And actually, Trump himself pointed out initially before backing down from that.
Yeah, we have to be really careful, and this is just a general wisdom statement. We have to be really careful about jumping to conclusions about an event. We live in extraordinary times, and a lot of crazy things are happening, but we have to be really careful about that. And was there more you wanted to say on that topic, or we can transfer to another point?
I think it's, well, I think we should transition. I also just want to acknowledge what you said, is that some of what we're talking about right now is you and I are not the most informed people here. So anybody who's listening to this, what I've said or what Brian said, none of this is like gospel. Like, this is us processing as we're understanding things. And it's appropriate for you to seek the truth, verify, and ultimately, as we've been studying, try to bring that back to a Christ-like understanding, and allow that to be first, as opposed to a political party defining your response.
Right. And so from the book, I would say a couple of points. Well, one, you should always be cynical. but
yeah, skeptical.
Look at through a moral lens, which we've brought up, and then from the book, it was really helpful for me to say, okay, step back from this being your country, potentially your party's person, and say, well, what if this was the nation of India, right? And this happened there. Give yourself some emotional distance, because this isn't your only country. You know, you're primarily a citizen of the kingdom of God. And so you're not all your emotional baggage and connections should be centered here, to allow yourself a little bit more objectivity on this whole thing. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I agree. To take a step away, and to recognize kind of where your first priorities are in terms of your allegiances. I think that makes it easier.
It does help.
Yeah.
But what other? I have a couple of I have two things I want to talk about. I don't know what other things you have. So.
Well, two might be enough, because we're almost 20 minutes in, and this is so. So go for it.
Boy, I'm trying to remember both of them. Well, one of them is kind of goes together with. So one of the things I've seen is a picture of Jesus with a flag in the background, with the bandage on his ear, like Donald Trump did, and it's that picture that it's like, okay, that should bother you as a Christian, because that really is truly merging nationalism, patriotic nationalism, and your faith. That is Christian nationalism, and Christian nationalism is a real thing, and it's idolatry, to be blunt. It's not a good thing, and to kind of piggyback along that is, if you noticed at the Republican convention, there's two people who spoke that should, as a Christian, go. One of which is, there was a woman who gave a prayer to a Hindu god, asking for blessings. It's like, that, and the other one was there was a celebrity who definitely does not have a Christian lifestyle at all, endorsing Trump.
Yeah. I figured out who that was. Amber Rose.
Yeah. Rose. Now, from a political standpoint, there's a good thing with that, in that it's an open tent, a big tent. But my point is that should remind you that that either party is not fundamentally Christian.
Yeah,
it's not a Christian organization. You may hold that one or the other holds more, are more in line with your beliefs and your morals. Okay, sure, but that doesn't mean that you can't assume that it is. So just be really careful with this, and use it as a moment to step back and go, okay, they're not. It's not a church. It's not a denomination.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this on Sunday, and the idea that assuming that somebody who is a Democrat isn't Christian is tantamount to assuming that everybody who is Republican is Christian. It's
Can't do.
Yeah, I had a friend. I think I've mentioned this before. But lifelong friend, somebody I've known since fifth grade, came by during COVID, So obviously this is a while ago. And we just played Frisbee in the front yard and talked because we hadn't talked in a while. And he knew, the importance of my faith to me. His assumption was that I was a Republican. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting because I don't necessarily, I try not to claim a party. He's like, oh, what's that?
You're really are truly one of the true independents out there.
I try to be, and like most people, there are certain things that I'm drawn towards. There's certain topics where I may have a more a conservative view or a more progressive view. I don't really want a political party to define how I feel about things.
Yeah.
Because policies are going to be different. So I don't want to make assumptions about people. And I think that's a big part of this is there's making assumptions about who people are, where they're coming from, and to conflate, as you're talking about, our faith with nationalism can be very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked, you and I had a conversation about our church and the future of our church. And I don't remember how far back this goes, but we, as a church of, as people who are actually meeting in the room, 50 or 60 people, a lot more online than that, that God uses us. And the size of our church doesn't necessarily represent our value to God in the same way that a church like Mars Hill in Seattle, which was enormous and doesn't exist anymore, but God just chose not to use Mark Driscoll or to use that church. In the same way, our country, he could decide, my plans for this world no longer require the United States of America, and it will be gone.
Oh, yeah. It happened.
Yeah. And so what I mean, if that happened, then what's our response to that? It's like, oh, did God abandon us? Was it because we weren't Christian enough? And we're going to come up with reasons for that. But if you think about the Israelites and what happened, to them every time they screwed up, God's like, bink. And then eventually he's like, well, I'm going to let you go into the Babylon for a while. I want you to think about what you did.
Oh, I wonder if my dog's going to bark because my son just got home. And speaking of assumptions, that kind of brings me to the second one that's kind of like that. And it's one of the things Trump said was that God saved his life. And I don't have a problem with that particular statement. What I have a problem with is then assuming that what it means, and what people are going to assume that it means. For example, theologically, I can make the argument that people die when God says they die.
Mm-hmm. I
can make a strong argument that He's ordered our days. He's numbered them. Psalm 139. The God's the one that chooses whether we live or die. James, no sparrow falls to the ground apart from the Father's will. Matthew 5. Yeah. So I can make the argument that the reason why Trump is still here is because God decided that to be the case. You cannot say why. You can't say why. You can't say, well, because he wants him to be president. You can't say that. Because what happens to your argument if in next week, stop it, next week he dies of a stroke, right? It's like you can't say that. And so be really careful to not say that God said that something means something, to say something about God or a person so authoritatively that you can't prove from Scripture.
Right.
You just can't. You just can't do that.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, for whatever reason, Trump's life was preserved, and God could have directed it. God could have also have allowed something to happen.
Sure.
And
for whatever. used. Right.
Right. And we don't understand the intentions. There's so many things in our lives that there's bad things that happen, and we could we could ascribe those to Satan attacking us, or spiritual warfare.
But you don't know.
But you don't know, and sometimes, like 5 years later, you go, "Oh, thank God that happened." Like me losing my job in 2017. That was devastating, right? And it was
Right.
unfair, right? And there was a couple of years that like, what's going on here? I didn't go, all right, well, Satan's attacking me, but it took me a few years to kind of go, wow, what a blessing that was.
We just can't read into events in life either the judgment or blessing of God. You just can't.
Yeah.
You just can't. And so, I mean, because the other way around, you're just like, okay, so what about the firefighter who died?
Right.
Right. And we can take this out of the whole political thing, and let's say, someone came into church on Sunday and they shot and they missed me, barely, miraculously, just inexplicably, I got missed, but another person in the congregation died. I mean, could that happen? Absolutely. Yeah. So how do we process that? It happened.
The thing I think I struggled with as much as anything was seeing how people were responding to that as, oh, God must want to use him, this, and like, this is surely a sign that he should be and is, God ordained to be president. And well, if I flip that around and say, well, what if the attempt was on Biden's life and it clipped his ear? Would the same people be going, would they draw the same conclusion? And I don't.
But they wouldn't.
They wouldn't. Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
Right. They may have said, well, God, Satan saved him or something. It's like so yeah. Can you say, I think I can theologize, because you have to be really careful. What can you prove or prove not from Scripture? And you can argue, I think, that the people who are alive are here because God said that your time is not up yet. I'm fine with that. You just can't say why. You could even say for a purpose, but you don't, but you don't know what the purpose is.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is, right? Maybe God saved his life because he wanted Barron, his son, to see him a little longer. I don't know, but you don't know it's to be president. You just can't say it.
Yeah.
But that brings me to the last one, and I have no idea how much time. We probably are running out of time, or have.
We're good. We're good.
There was one person that, and I don't know if it was they brought it up to you, but you brought it up pre the video today, that brought up to me the whole Revelation 13 that said the beast was wounded in the head, but he survived, and that. Where did you hear that idea? Was it someone at church as well, or
no? I think it was probably somebody in my social media feed had posted that, and I just rolled my eyes. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
No, again, you got to be. I don't think that's what that means. And anytime that you're taking prophecy and you're saying, with a newspaper in the other hand, you're saying this means that, you got to be super cautious, to the point of like going, I don't know, man. Yeah. Come on. People, don't be gullible like that. We should be beyond, what's that one? Mark of the beast is that you have a barcode on your head or a chip in your hand. It's like, please, people, use some biblical interpretation than this.
Well, if you look at it, like, how many different prophecies did Jesus fulfill? It wasn't just one, right?
Right.
So to say, Revelation 13:3, wounded in the head, and yet it's healed, and people were amazed, and they followed him. He must be the Antichrist. It's like, well,
and I'm convinced that prophecy, from a human perspective, is not clear until after the fact.
like a lot of things.
I think most prophecy, maybe all, could you have put it together? Well, yeah, but you really don't, because people in Jesus's day, even the people who should have understood, didn't get it. It wasn't until afterwards they could look back and go, oh, Isaiah 53 is about Jesus. Oh, Psalm 22 is about Jesus. Oh, now I can see it, but they couldn't see it before.
The first time you saw The Sixth Sense, right? Have you seen it? Yeah. As soon as the twist is revealed, you go back and go,
oh, it was obvious.
Yeah. Have you seen Memento?
Yeah. Same thing.
Same thing. You get to the end and you went, oh my gosh, the clues were there the whole time, but I could not have understood that, and in the moment. It's only after the fact that I can trace that back. So we get so desperate to explain things and to explain them in the way that we want them to be,
right?
That we project forward when, all's going to be revealed, and we'll go, oh, well, I had that wrong. Thank God that He is so gracious.
So do you have any other kind of summary, just recommendations about how to process these days?
I think it's a shared experience that's an opportunity to unify. And so if we can resist the urge to try to project some kind of meaning onto it outside of what it is, the event itself. Like you said, take a step away and then look at how you can serve people who are working their way through that you get to model Christ in those circumstances, versus, going into battle for, in a war where you're not on a side, or right, where you're on Jesus's side, but not on any other side.
Yeah. Remember that you're primarily on Jesus's side, the kingdom of God's side. Yeah. I think being really careful and cautious about assigning meaning to stuff, like you said, whether it's, how someone's reacting to this or not reacting to this. Look through it through a moral lens. Killing people is not a good thing.
Yeah. Right?
Lying is not a good thing. Let's remember that. Let's remember the human heart is corrupt. That everybody's flawed is a good thing, and everybody needs Jesus. Fundamentally, and I talked about that on Sunday, what's the most important thing we can be doing as Christians? And it's not electing a president. It's telling them people about Jesus. So, all right.
Fair.
If you have thoughts or questions, or you want to take us to task and say we're wrong on something, let us know, either privately or online here. We can take it. We're grown-ups. Maybe we're wrong.
Oh, I'm sure we're wrong somehow. I mean, seriously. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Take care.